past all of these community boards to Strategy and Finance. Item number 25, Cars Reserve Horsewall, relocation of Christchurch Kart Club and Canterbury Greyhounds. We have a staff recommendation which was adopted by the committee, as I recall. And would someone like to move that? Vicky, seconded by Jamie. Is there any discussion? Are there any questions?
I had a lot of questions that I put through. I'm still waiting to get the answers back. Okay. I was just wondering if someone can give me the answers to those questions.
Who's doing the Kart Club Reserve? Is that you, Jane? Or no?
Oh, okay.
Right. Sorry, we're up to the Cars Reserve relocation of Christchurch Kart Club and Christchurch Greyhounds. Yanni has a couple of questions.
Right. Have you seen these questions?
No, I haven't seen the question.
Okay. Well, these were submitted a few days ago. So, right. Okay. Go through that.
Look, excuse me, can I just interrupt for 1 second, because I'm just a little bit concerned about the item on the agenda. I was searching for the Keep New Zealand Beautiful campaign, and I'd just really like to kind of put this on the record. Keep New Zealand Beautiful is funded, yes, by Coca-Cola and by a couple of other organisations, but the reason that they have accepted money for British American Tobacco is to assist with the cigarette butt campaign funding only. They say they're reliant, obviously, on any funding we can get to deal with serious environmental problems like cigarette butt disposal. For that reason, we've made a considered decision to accept funding from British American Tobacco New Zealand to assist our anti-litter education programs. We recognise British American Tobacco's awareness of the environmental impact of its products, let alone everything else, and its contribution to mitigating that impact. Keep New Zealand Beautiful's acceptance of this funding in no way endorses or supports smoking or the tobacco industry, but British American Tobacco receives no public endorsement, recognition or promotion from Keep New Zealand Beautiful as a result of funding this program. So it's specifically targeted only to the cigarette butt campaign. So I just wanted to kind of put that on the record. It doesn't change anything, but I just wouldn't want to get a letter from them saying that we were saying that they were funding Keep New Zealand Beautiful for its campaign. It's not. It's dealing with the problem that its own industry creates. One of the very small parts of the problems that they create. Obviously, they create a far bigger amount of problems to human health. But anyway, so cigarette butts are the worst thing to pick up on a beach cleaning campaign, especially if they've been made wet by the environment that they're in. Anyway, so questions for the...
Sorry, Councillor, I wasn't aware that.
No, that's okay. I raised them with Colleen and Michael. So the first question, if the Kart Club and Greyhound track remain, approximately how many houses can be built in the proposed residential development? That's the first one.
If it was to remain,
yeah.
In the area around about the 400 metre radius, there probably wouldn't be any. Certainly without going through a very steep resource consent, right. A non-compliant resource consent. So
what could be there?
There could, yes, it would be non-noise sensitive activities, like some sort of industrial zone would be allowed to go there.
Okay. The second one was, is it possible to get a map of the current zoning and the proposed zoning with the Kart Club relocated?
So I didn't.
Is it possible to get a map with the current zoning and with the proposed zoning once the Kart Club's relocated, so you can understand the difference in zoning?
I'm sorry, we but sort of, yeah. So you're trying to get...
No, I'm just trying to understand that if once the kart club's relocated,
Yeah.
there's obviously some zoning
That's right,
issues that happen.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to understand if we don't agree to relocate the kart club, what the zoning will be.
Well, that would remain to be seen. There is an option here in the report that says that it could go to a business zone if the go-kart club remained. But I think that would, if the kart club remained, it would require another, I think, set of investigations as to what those options were. Now, the report says that a business zoning or industrial zoning is one of those options. And it's probably the most likely one that would make the most economic use of the site, of that particular piece of land. So, and I think realistically that would be the choice in an urban environment, that if the go-kart club remained, it'd be more than likely that the council or the independent hearings panel, if it went through that direction, would consider some sort of industrial zoning. But there are planning issues around that. There are issues with the regional policy statement and the LERP, because that identifies the area as a greenfield residential priority area. So that would be one impediment. The other is some quite careful planning to ensure that such a zone would be integrated into what is essentially a surrounding residential area. And it's a different traffic environment that would be created, it would need to be carefully planned and thought through. But it's certainly conceivable, and that's what would, I imagine, that's the type of zone that would go in place if the go-kart club remained.
Question 3 was, I'd like to propose an amendment that the cost of relocating the kart club is met through... I'd like to propose an amendment that the cost of relocating and making good the reserve is fully funded by a development agreement with the property owners who are benefiting from the increased value of their land. Can you please advise the appropriate resolutions to give effect to this?
No, Yanni, that is not an appropriate question to ask at a meeting.
Well,
So-
I raised it
No,
several days ago.
no. I told you how to raise questions, and if you've got an amendment that you want to move, then read the amendment out and we'll take it as an amendment.
Well, so when Jamie did his development contributions thing, he had advice from staff as to the wording, because
Yes, he was the chair of that committee.
Technical.
You were
so
at the
it's
Strategy and
entirely
Finance Committee meeting, Yanni.
appropriate to ask staff for advice as to the wording to give effect to a suggested amendment. I'm happy to
No.
propose one, just off the cuff, if that's what you'd like.
Well,
And
you do
I'll
some
do
work on it, and then we'll come back to it.
Okay, the
All
fourth
right,
question was, is it possible to get an approximate estimation of the change in the value of the land if the kart club is relocated that enables the rural land to be developed as residential? So what's the uplift in property value if the kart club's relocated?
Well, you're talking about the land surrounding the kart club.
Yeah.
That's not rural, that's actually residential at the moment in the city plan.
Okay. So if it's developed as been proposed, so you're saying there's no change in the value of the land if the kart club's there or not?
Well, that's a question, I think, for the real estate industry, depending, I mean, it really depends on the density of residential development as to what the block value might be, and also it depends on the type of industry that would go there. Industrial land tends to have a higher value than residential land, as a general observation. But we haven't asked anyone to look at those respective values and what the change in land value may be if it was zoned industrial. And as I said, it would really depend on the type of industrial zone that went there, and to make a comparison, I really can't comment.
But in terms of the value uplift if we make the decision to relocate the kart club, that enables a huge amount of, I think it's up to 670 houses to be developed on land that currently can't develop any houses.
Yes. So.
But they're not all owned by one person, and it's not a single developer there. That's what makes this a very complex decision. So, I appreciate the point that you're trying to make, but you've made your point, and I think we'll move on. So, there was somebody over here, Phil and Pauline and Paul.
Ivan, I just want to ask you about the impact of relocating the kart club to another area, like as is option 2. Doesn't that sort of lead to the potential for just transferring the issues like the noise problem, and how in fact can we mitigate that?
Yes, there have been some reasonably detailed studies into the preferred site. I don't think it's a secret what the preferred site is really, but it's a hole in the ground out at McLean's Island, and the noise assessments and the other impact assessments have suggested that it's worth pursuing. Now, clearly it has to go through a resource consent process, so it would be inappropriate for me to preempt any decision made by a commissioner on that. But yeah, we don't believe it's transferring like for like in terms of effects. I think the environment which it's going into would be somewhat more receptive than the current one, assuming the current one is a residential environment, if you get my drift on that. But yeah, quite a long time back, the council undertook an assessment of a number of options, and there were probably 2 or 3 which emerged as being more less environmentally sensitive to hosting this particular facility than the current location, if the current location is surrounded by housing.
Yeah. Pauline and then Paul.
Yes, that was going to be my question too, that there is no definite relocation place yet. You've answered that.
Oh, no, there is.
Yes, but it's not consented.
It's subject to consent.
Yes, right.
Yep.
The reserve land that it's located on now, is that contaminated?
Yes, it's an old landfill.
So for that to be turned back into a reserve or for any other use, how much do you think that would cost? What would it involve? And who would be paying for that?
Okay, we've had a look at possible uses for it. It would be developed, the best way for us to develop it would be along the similar lines to Bexley Park, which is an old landfill as well, so not intensive sports field development or anything like that, thinking along the lines of bike tracks and walking and that sort of thing. It would depend on the availability of capping material and things like that, but it's likely to be in excess of $1 million, but it's not a priority for us. It would come from, it would have to be budgeted for in the long-term plan, and being a growth area, it would be development contributions charged for the reserve development.
Fair to say there would be an additional cost over and above that amount there to council?
Yes, and that's what I think we indicated, that it's not funded at all in the 10-year, and it would be put up as a proposal in future LTPs.
And to pick up Yanni's point, can a development contribution be required for this relocation?
Yes, it can. We had legal opinion a number of years back, and development contributions can be used for this purpose because it frees up the reserve for other use. So
the entire cost could be met both for the remediation and for the removal?
Correct. That's the advice that we got, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Just under 3.1, the planning context, and in particular 3.1.1, the land between Awatere Road and Hallswood Junction Road has been identified as a potential urban growth area since 1995 as part of the Hallswood-Wigram expansion area. So if that was known as a growth area, why did we extend the Kart Club lease 50 years?
I think the lease was before this.
And it had an automatic right of renewal through it. It came originally from Papua County, and it had a term plus an automatic renewal clause in it, so we had no choice.
And on top of that...
we did explore this at the Strategy and Finance, similar question.
Yeah. But on top of that, I mean, it's an eye-watering sum to move the Kart Club and the Greyhound Club. $500,000 could be saved by just leaving the Greyhound Club where it is and removing the Kart Club. Has that been considered?
It has, and that is always an option. However, the land that the greyhounds are sitting on is, as they described out at the Rick and Wigram board, is quite unusable, as large sinkholes have started to appear in there as well. So it becomes a health and safety issue for them.
But would that, if they're the leasee, aren't they responsible for fixing those sinkholes?
I think we'd have to check with what our obligations were as the landowner and the
Generally, though, the
who
leasee
maintains
actually
it.
picks up those responsibilities
Yeah,
under
I'm
the
not
lease.
I'm not sure if it covers landfills.
Would be good to check that.
Right. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, we'll just put up Yanni's amendment.
So it's just an additional resolution, and I'd just ask that it gets voted on first, as it's to how this is funded, which would obviously impact on my vote for the 10.1, if that's possible.
But you've already said that this can be funded through a development levy, so a development contribution. So what's the difference with a development agreement?
The development levies will be spread across that whole catchment in terms of the reserve contribution, so it won't just be the surrounding landowners.
Right.
Whereas a private developer agreement would be tied to those particular.
Wouldn't this require a whole change in our whole DC policy, which we've just adopted, in terms of how those DCs are spread?
We still, with greenfield subdivisions, we still from time to time do private developer agreements in terms of infrastructure that they're putting in.
With
So
all of the property owners? What if one property owner says no?
I think that would make it complex.
Yes.
So if 10.2 were not carried, then you would do it as a development levy, a development contribution.
Would each property, would just be as per normal.
But you
DCs.
don't need a resolution to do that?
No, well, as the subdivisions come in.
Yeah, the development contributions collected as the subdivisions come in.
Right. So this should really read a private developer agreement, should it? Or is that what you would understand to be different from a development contribution?
That's my understanding.
Yes, they're two totally different things. So
Okay, so can we change that to private developer agreement?
Yes.
Because then you understand
Yes,
what
it's
that means.
A PDA, for short.
And does everyone here understand what the difference
No,
is?
I'd actually like to know how many property owners there are, because that will actually impact on the decision. Because if there's like 20 property owners, it's going to be really difficult to get agreement.
The interesting thing is that when you attach it to the uplift in value, that actually applies to the rest of the subdivision that's already started. So it's not easy. But anyway, are you seconding it?
No, I've got a question.
Okay.
So around the difficulty of enforcing what's proposed in the amendment in 10.2, given the number of property owners, just how that would work. And then my second question is the number of properties or the area which would be subject to the development contributions under 10.1 versus the area or number of properties that would be contributing in 10.2, just to kind of get a picture of what the difference between the two would be in terms of how it would work, and secondly, who would be expected to contribute, or how wide an area that contribution would be over.
In respect to the first question, one of the challenges when we've got fragmented land is for a single developer to get contracts with all the landowners. Now, a developer may choose to do a PDA on money, speculating here, but on the basis that such agreements could be reached, but that would be a huge risk for that developer. It is an issue we've got in greenfield areas, at the moment with the number of landowners who need to be brought into such an agreement. A developer to do a PDA with us, first of all, there's got to be one who's got to be found. Secondly, they need to be able to be sure they're going to secure all the land. So that creates quite a bit of uncertainty, and that's probably the thing we're trying to avoid here, is to try and create a certain environment for everybody.
All right. So, well, hang on. We need a seconder for the amendment.
And sorry, the second question was around the area that would be covered. I mean, obviously, if it was the developer agreement, that would just relate to these particular parcels of land.
Yes.
The development contributions, as in 10.1, what area would they be over? Like, how wide would they spread?
That's a catchment.
It's
So citywide.
it could be a citywide catchment for that particular DC. I would have to check that. Yeah, so that would be anything happening. Some of the infrastructure is based on quite discrete catchments like stormwater, whereas a lot of the reserve ones are either central city or citywide, and I think that could be a citywide catchment area.
So it could, in fact, then be spread wider than the area where they would be expected to be an uplift in value.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I mean, currently there's probably only about 6 or so landowners around.
Yes, I'm not sure, but it's not a large number.
The trouble is that the landowners concerned aren't all operating as a single block, but the development is a single development. You know, so that they're individual owners within it, and some of them can't proceed unless the rest of the development's going to proceed, because the money doesn't stack up. You know, if you're going to put in roads, if you're going to put in the infrastructure, then you actually need to know that there's X number of houses going in. Yes. So you might actually want to apply the cost to a small group, but they won't be able to build unless the rest is able to build. So it's not an uplift in value, it's actually an uplift in capacity to do the development. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? On your own amendment? All right.
So just to clarify,
have I got a seconder for it?
The cost of relocation.
There isn't a seconder, so it fails for want of a seconder. So,
okay.
All right. So we'll move to the resolution. I'll put the resolution.
Sorry, debate? Yeah, I'd like to debate.
Yeah, you can debate it.
I just want to say that this has gone through a process whereby all of the groups came into the Riccarton Wigram Community Board, sat around and talked through the issues. A very good process. And then the Riccarton Wigram Community Board had time to reflect, and it met the next day or so and actually worked with staff to find a means to get to these resolutions. So we have a staff recommendation, we have a board consideration, and we have a committee recommendation, all basically saying the same thing. And they are based on achieving certainty. You'll recall when this report came to us, first of all, and was withdrawn for much more community input, the suggestion was that the cost of relocating the kart club was likely to rise to 7 million, which was pretty scary. And so the concept that is before us aims to lock in numbers and lock in a time frame. This has been going on for a really long period of time, and why anybody would ever sign a 66-year lease defies logic. But this is obviously one of the problems when you do sign a 66-year lease. And so we are left with a problem where we have a very rapidly developing area that wants to be able to develop in residential, is supposed to be developing in residential. We either have to make the call that it can, and hence the timeline on the kart club, or we have to look at rezoning. So the aim of this is to achieve financial certainty and timing certainty, and achieve an outcome that everybody can live with in this area of town, where there are a lot of competing interests and very interested parties in the development of this. Hence, the only giving the kart club a short window to say, yes, we want to relocate, or no, we don't, and then working with them to sort out the relocation. If that is not possible, and if they do not agree by that period of time, obviously we look to rezoning. We have to look to rezoning that area. So this gets us a amount of money that is already in the long-term plan and is funded by development contributions, and it gets us certainty about the way forward. And it was basically, it was agreed by, it's most of what the staff said, amended slightly by the Riccarton Wigram Community Board, and then adopted by the Strategy and Finance Committee. So it's had quite a thorough process over a period of time.
Very good. Yanni.
just want to be clear on this, that certainly I don't think the entire cost of this relocation is going to be met through development contributions, and it's certainly not going to be met through the local area. The people that are gaining the biggest benefit won't actually be funding the cost of the relocation. That will be citywide. It won't include the central city because there's a central city rebate. So basically developers in other parts of the city in the east and the north will be paying for the cost of relocating this. But I also think there is a rates impact of 0.1%, which is mentioned in here, and also an impact on our net debt ratio. I originally supported the idea that we would relocate the kart club, but not the greyhounds. Unfortunately, in the time that's proceeded to pass, the attempts to relocate have not been fruitful or successful, and the costs have increased dramatically. And so I'm very sceptical that they will find an alternative site for the kart club in the short to medium term. But if it could be found, then I think it's entirely appropriate that the people who are going to benefit from the relocation of it fund that cost directly. I can't see why we're charging developers in other parts of the city that want to intensify existing brownfield sites with existing infrastructure the cost of relocating these activities. So I'm disappointed that the amendment wasn't seconded and wasn't put. I can't support us spending more money in a financially constrained situation to provide a direct value and benefit to property owners that falls on the rest of the city to get more residential housing in this area. I just don't think it's realistic. I think we need to start having a really good think about how we're funding the infrastructure associated with the rezoning of land and why it's fair to charge people across the entire city to benefit a few. So I won't support this. I cannot justify the cost either associated with relocating the kart club and also that I can't see the need for even relocating the greyhounds, which actually don't need to be relocated in terms of enabling the residential activity to occur. So I don't know why we would be paying for that.
Phil?
Actually, mine also included as a question, just of clarification
Well,
too.
we're debating the...
I know, well, we are.
Yeah.
It's just clarification around agreeing to the following, and we haven't got anything after that, that's all. But
Yes, we have. It's the balance of the recommendation that's in the... so if you want to scroll back up, you can see what the balance of it is.
following, okay, yep, so that's fine. I'm actually going to support the recommendation. I think what's important is, in fact, we have a clear and fair process around our development contributions policy, and we stick with this. As Vicky indicated, this has dragged on for years, and what it does need a resolution. And I think staff, I'm sure staff will look carefully at the future relocation position and consider that very carefully. So I'm certainly going to support the recommendation.
Glenn.
Thank you. Although I have some sympathy for Yanni's position there, my information, latent, I've just received it from one of the members of the board, is that, because I asked this question, long term the rates take from development there will overtake any price to pay now. So I'm happy in that regard. Provides more housing, the income for the city will actually overtake any costs. So if there is a burden that does that will transpire onto other parts of the city, that's short term. In the longer term, I think it's for the best of the city.
Jimmy.
As a local councillor, I fully support this recommendation because I passed through all the process, especially this issue, my understanding has been exist for probably 20 years. And also the last month, I remember the council meeting request the local community board to review this issue and try to recommend to the council. And in that time, through all the process, the community board member, community board, they organized the kind of the meeting to integrate all the different the parties, different groups, have a further and thorough the discussion. So this is kind of not just one group or two groups, it's all the group get the resolution. Because why the one key issue is the council already, signed this kind of the lease agreement with the Christchurch Car Club as well as the Grey Home. Then also expiry date, one will be in 2054, the other will be 2047. But this is the council responsibility. Also, if we choose some other options rather than this one, like Vicky, she mentioned earlier, this kind of very certainty, certainty regarding to the finance, certainty regarding to the timing and acceptable for all of the people. And also based on the staff that replied earlier, actually through the new subdivision, council get those development contribution, can compensate, to meet all those relocation as well as the new infrastructure facilities needs. But regard to amendment, we still need to be consider this uncertainty, the situation maybe make this the issue more getting worse, and later on probably this dispute will be happen again. So that's why I support the committee the recommendation. Thank you.
Very good. All right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's it. Record Jana Johansson opposed. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the lighting exemplar project, Linwood Village Street Environment. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Paul Lonsdale, seconded Yanni. Is there any discussion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. The long walk.